Good morning and happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier from Baking Innovation, and we'll be answering your questions. So, without further ado, let's get started. Uh, First question is coming from someone who's asking about sodium metabisulfite, and which is used for food preservation. It's used in different industry, but mostly in food preservation. So the question is whether metabisulfite in a powdered form can be added to biscuits and pastry, or is it preferable to add it as a solution, meaning blend it with water? And the fact that it is used in such a small portion, it would be too difficult to control and get consistent in a powdered form. So the recommended would be to put in a solution. So how would you do it? You would take a small portion of your water, took your sodium metabisulfite, which is soluble, stir it, and make sure it's dissolved, and then throw it back into your mix so you'll get more of an homogeneous blend and it's better dispersed throughout and you'll get better value from it. So that's the question and that's the answer. So moving on to the next question. Non-fat dry milk. When using low heat non-fat dry milk in a no time dough, does adding non-fat dry milk low heat work in a sponge and dough system? And just for the, non-fat dry milk is not just non-fat dry milk. You have two different versions. You have the low heat and the high heat. And the difference between the two is the way they're treating it. And in the low heat, what happens when you put it into bread fermentation, it has a tendency to act like a reducing agent. And if you don't know reducing and oxidizing agent, please go to the BAKERpedia page. Dr. Lin has a lot of talks and topics about that, about oxidizing and reducing, and it's really informative, so I highly recommend it. But going back to the non-fat dry milk, the low heat has properties that will basically behave similarly to a reducing agent or L-cysteine. And what it does is going to make your dough basically weaker, tacky, and bulky. So it's best when you're using non-fat dry milk to use the high heat for yeast-raised products. That's the recommendation. And non-fat dry milk, it's good for dough absorption. It absorbs more water, so when you play with it, make sure you change the hydration slightly. And there's a lot of rules of thumb and how much to use, and it will get you in really nice color and helps the yeast with the fermentation because of the sugar available in there. But yeah, that's the answer. So now moving on to our next question. Somebody's trying to get 10-day shelf life of my blueberry bran muffin batter. How much potassium sorbate in percent should I add for 10-day shelf life? Well, let's go back. We've had a lot of conversation, and again, lots of great topics on BAKERpedia regarding, preservation systems and potassium sorbate, sodium propionate, sorbic acid, where you'll find, she breaks it down in more details. But overall, potassium sorbate, it's used in chemically leavened product at the level from 0.03% up to basically 0.4% of the total batter weight. So you're not going to use excessive amounts. So now you're saying, okay, because your question is quite specific and you're asking, I want to get 10 days with my bran batter. But let's think about it. What's 10 days of what? The potassium sorbate is acting as to retard spoilage within the mold. So that will do it. But how's your texture? How's the texture of the product? Is the product being packaged? What's the pH of the product? What's the water activity? So in order to, everybody's talking about shelf life and say, I want longer shelf life, but longer shelf life of your product, but what needs to be done? What's the packaging? What is the moisture vapor transfer rate, the MVTR of your packaging? What is what ingredients are you using? What kind of sanitation program do you have? Once you cool your muffins, how long do they sit on the rack? Do people use gloves to move them? Is your system fully automated, et cetera, et cetera? So those are the questions to ask when you're trying to extend the shelf life, because extending shelf life is not just necessarily, hey, I get zero mold. Now it's like, how's the texture of the product? Does it taste fresh? Does it crumble? Do people? So I would love to be able to help you. So what I'm recommending is go to the bakery resources on BAKERpedia and look for the consultant page. Then you can find several consultants, and we do it, either 30 minutes, an hour, and we can go with you through your process and see, hey, what could be changed? And it's really worth it. You remember, it's like, sometimes you could be wasting products in 10 days and get a return of a full order. It's much more than 30 minutes or an hour consultation time with an expert. So, and there was one last question, which, somebody was asking how much lecithin to use in a chili sauce to stabilize it. So I apologize, but it's a bakery channel. We're talking about bakery question when we're talking about seasoning and dressings and everything. This is a different area. That's the thing to understand, is each category, whether or not it's dairy, poultry, bakery, the science is very specific to the category. It doesn't mean we don't understand the mechanics or the science of lecithin and how it could work, but then it applies to different rules and regulations slightly, and that's why we would rather not get into it. So there you go, my friends. So this is another great Tuesday 10 out of 10. You keep on baking, you stay warm. Hopefully the nice weather will come back, and can't wait for next week. You take care and happy baking.